Hello everyone, today we're looking at professionalism, sponsorship, and the media's involvement in sport. So our learning objective today is to look at how sport has changed mainly throughout the 20th century and the differences between professional and amateur sport. That's our starter for today, to think about the difference between a pro and amateur athlete. So go ahead, write down your title, your learning objective, and your starter. Give it a go, and when you feel that you're done, hit play, and we'll look at the starter question together. So some differences between amateurs and professionals. So an amateur is defined as someone who engages in something for pleasure rather than for financial or professional reasons. A professional is someone who does something because they receive payment for their performance. So anyone who teaches you are professional teachers. They teach because, well, they enjoy it, but because that's what they do for financial payment. Now, your teachers, although they're professional teachers, might be amateurs in other areas. So they might be an amateur footballer, they might be an amateur woodworker, they might be an amateur artist. They don't make money from playing football or woodworking or making art, but they do it for pleasure rather than financial gain. So the main way to remember the difference between amateurs and pros, amateurs don't get paid anything. Professionals get payment. So we have two keywords to look at. We have salary cap and rugby union. As always, in your head, try to match them up together. When you're ready, go ahead and hit play again, and we'll take them up. So you had a 50-50 shot. Salary cap is a limit placed on the amount of money teams are able to spend to buy players. And rugby union is a form of rugby played in teams of 15. Originally, this started off as an amateur sport. It was only opened up to being professionalized in the year 1995. So a little bit of context for us. We need to remember that boot money was quite popular in the late 1800s and early 1900s. These were those illegal payments made to athletes sort of under the table by both teams and sponsors. Now, a broken time payment was also popular. This is when a sports team would pay an athlete the wage they would miss by taking a day off work to train or play. So if a footballer worked in a factory Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, and he had a match on a Wednesday that he needed to miss work for, he would often say to a sports team, look, I need to work at the factory on Wednesday to make my paycheck for the week so I can afford my food, my clothing, and my rent. The sports team would say, fair enough. What we'll do is we'll pay you the same amount of money the factory would have paid you for that Wednesday you're going to take off. And this was a way for sports teams to start to pay their athletes for their time, both training and playing. Now, this was all because professional athletes didn't earn a living wage really until the mid-1900s. A lot of them would rely on boot money and broken time payments to help make ends meet. So our main task today is to listen to the reading. It'll be read aloud for you. You can follow along in your leisure textbook on page 4 and 5 if you wish, but you'll need to make sure you're pausing the video periodically to be able to read through and make notes from the reading. So let's go ahead and we'll do that now.
Professionalism in sport is not a modern concept. Military prowess has always been rewarded. Warriors in ancient times, knights in the Middle Ages and routiers in the 17th century made a living with prize money or by gaining the patronage of rich nobles. In a less belligerent way, athletic young men in 18th century England gained employment as estate workers on account of their cricketing skills, and diminutive stable boys found themselves riding as jockeys in the high-stake gambling of landowners. In the second half of the 19th century, national associations were formed which encouraged amateur values and practices in opposition to professionalism as a way of promoting mutual respect and sportsmanship. By the 20th century, the demand for mass entertainment in Britain was to produce a highly successful system of professional spectator sport, especially in football, rugby and cricket. The growth of socially mixed northern teams led to broken time payments where working men were compensated for having to miss work in order to play. In 1895 the split between rugby union and rugby league came about because the rugby union, the game's organisers, refused demands from players to be paid for time lost at work. The issue widened when northern clubs suggested rule changes to make rugby more attractive to spectators who were switching to association football. Two codes emerged: rugby league played mostly by working-class men in the industrial towns of the north of England, and rugby union played in the south of England, Wales, and Scotland. The split was eventually healed at the end of the 20th century when rugby union allowed professionalism. The Football Association sanctioned professionalism in 1885. On a global stage, the philosophy of the modern Olympic Games was always based on the ideal of sportsmen and women competing purely for enjoyment. As competition intensified, competitors found it increasingly more difficult to reach the standards demanded. One of the first moves to help them came with the Sports Aid Fund, which collected sponsorship money from businesses, followed by national lottery grants. Some amateur sportsmen and women got around the professional issue by having trust funds or receiving illegal payments, and the issue of boot money was contentious in rugby union. Cricket tended to be played by the better off, although many working-class areas fielded teams. Paying top players was common, but there was a distinction between amateur gentlemen players and professionals. Tennis retained its amateur status until commercial pressures and rumors of illegal payments led to the sport becoming open in 1968, meaning that there is no distinction made between amateur and professional. By the end of the 20th century, sport had become big business, with huge amounts of money being invested in order to create the sports product with all the economic spin-offs.
Chapter 2. Changes in Sport in the 20th Century. At the start of the 20th century, sport was still dominated by the middle and upper classes in Great Britain, as they had more leisure time and disposable income available to them. Apart from the national sport of football, this was the trend that continued until the end of the Second World War, as people had to work long hours. It wasn't until 1945 that working hours were reduced to approximately 40 hours a week, which gave people time to participate in sporting activities. During the mid and late 20th century, sport quickly developed as a central part of people's leisure time. One of the most popular pastimes during the 20th century was walking, and this developed greatly through walking clubs and rambling associations. Walking has always been an activity that both men and women can become involved with, and it can be a relatively cheap leisure activity. The British government has encouraged this aspect of sport by clearing public pathways and producing walking pamphlets, encouraging families to keep fit through this form of exercise. The British government has also encouraged more people to cycle, as they've created national cycleways that encourage people to use their bikes more. An increasing number of cycle clubs have been started too, helped by the success of the British cycling team at the Olympic Games in 2008. Some British sports were, and to some extent still are, dominated by one gender or the other. At one time, sports such as snooker, cricket and golf tended to be enjoyed by men, whilst women, on the whole, preferred sports such as swimming, yoga and netball. However, many of these sports, such as golf, have now become more unisex. Gym membership has seen a dramatic increase in the 21st century, as both men and women see the benefit of taking fitness classes. Sport has definitely become a central part of many people's leisure time today. Supporting regional and national sports teams has become a national pastime too, and alongside people asking you where you are from, you are just as likely to be asked what football team you support. Fans enjoy travelling around the country supporting their football or rugby team. Whenever there is a World Cup, whether football or rugby, patriotic support can literally bring the country to a standstill. This fan devotion has crossed over into other sports too. The late 20th century saw an increase in national support for sports such as cricket, badminton, cycling and tennis. These sports were originally seen as mainly for the upper classes, but the coverage of Wimbledon and success at the Athens and Beijing Olympic Games have all made these sports popular with the general British public. There's a great deal of emphasis today placed on people's fitness, and gym membership has increased, as has the number of sports games that can be played on game stations to encourage people's fitness. Sport in the 21st century is now seen as a vital part of maintaining people's fitness and not just as a passive leisure activity.
So we had a look at 2 slides of reading as well as a short video. Your job now is to summarize everything that we've learned about professionalism in sport by answering the following 4 questions. So we'll write those down into our notes now, and we'll be answering them in full sentences. The 4 questions we need. What is the relationship between the growth of spectator sports and the rise of professionalism? There's a relationship between spectators paying and professionals earning money. Your job is to find what that relationship might be. Question 2, what is the biggest difference between amateur and professional sport? Think back to our starter today. What do amateurs not get that professionals do? Why is professionalism in sport not a new concept? If we go back to the reading, you'll actually hear the reader answer this quite clearly at the very start. And question 4, how did broken time payments lead to professionalism in sport? And think about what those athletes were getting from the team that they were not getting from their employer. Now, when you're done answering those 4 questions in full sentences, you can move on to your final task, which is to summarize Unit 1, all about sport, by making a mind map about everything we've learned in this unit.